Sonic Shuffle is a weird game. Yes, I just read the title of this video, and I will elaborate. By the time of 2000, video games pretty much just seen one of the biggest spikes of advancement that we've ever seen. From heading from 8-bit to 16-bit, to even the period that we had 32 bits and even to 64, gaming hit a big apex in a lot of ways. Games got more complicated, games got more intricate, but most importantly, it led into a big phase of video games of becoming a sleepover trope in a lot of ways. You just got home from school from talking about the latest episode of Thursday Night SmackDown. Your parent is ready to go to Blockbuster so you can rent out a couple games for your friends to have for their sleepover, and buying you and your friends some snacks so y'all can actually enjoy yourselves. By this time in 2000, multiplayer games stopped being the game that you'd have with your little brother because your mom told you that you need to play with them, to now just being this big friend group thing where everyone can join and jump around in circles with. And you know, when you have a big enough group of friends, playing something like a fighting game can be fun, but what is more fun is when all of us is playing. And that was the N64's biggest signature move. If your friend had a PlayStation, it was cool to play those games, but the one thing that the N64 had was 4-player games that everyone can play. Games like Super Smash Bros., Star Fox, GoldenEye, Mario Kart 64, and Mario Party. No boy, Mario Party was one of the biggest staples. As much battle mode could be considered a core memory to a lot of people, even me, from someone that wasn't really born in that time period, I've had countless nights of playing Mario Party with my friends just because of how malicious we can get with each other. Look, playing all the tracks in whatever Mario Kart that you're racing on is always a fun and exciting time, but there is always a relaxing feeling when you and your friends just decide to play 50 turns and just let the night go by talking and playing at the same time. It was really clear to say that Nintendo had something special with the idea of Mario Party, where we all are just sitting down, playing on a board, playing mini games, and just letting the time go by until we finally hit the final turn mark. And it actually would just become the signature thing for the N64, like I said, and even for the GameCube as its time continued. But with so many good things always come in miserable ways, and that was the shovelware. These games would take the idea and not really articulate it as much as something like Mario Party could. Of course, we had stuff like Shrek Super Party, Mary-Kate Ashley's Sweet 16 License to Drive. Yes, that's a real game, and even Crash Boom Bang. Yes, that one's a handheld, but whenever I'm gonna mention this game, mention to throw it to the trash, in a way, the console war was in a really weird state around that time in the perspective in America, because we've only known the rivalry to being Sega and Nintendo, and if you know the story about the Sega Saturn and why that didn't work here in the States, it's a long story. But to put it in the simplest of ways, when Sony became the new kids on the block and entering in the fold, Sega basically overreacted and kind of ruined a lot of relationships with distributors. As Sega was basically licking their wounds, they would release something in the later parts of the 1990s called the Sega Dreamcast, or what I like to call most millennials' core memory. And Sega doing what Sega usually does, they do what they wanted to do with this system, and this was considered a next-gen system compared to the other two. It had smoother graphics, it was truly next-gen in a lot of people's perspectives, but there was the one thing that had the biggest problem. It was that as much as it had 4 ports, it just didn't have that party game staple. And so, Sega would decide to actually put their own twists with it. And that would be coming out in November 13th of 2000, which it would release on the Dreamcast known as Sonic Shuffle. By this time, Mario Party 1 has already released, and it's pretty much, well, looking back upon it now, it's kind of cruel, but it was a new idea that really gotten people to be interested into it. It would actually grow kind of a cult following with its other entries and becoming one of the bigger staples of the Mario series as a multiplayer game. It would never be Mario Kart, but it was always the game that when a new one comes out, all the Mario Party fans are definitely going to be trying it. But with a world like Sonic, how does Sonic translate to a party game with such a vast series to be something like this? Well, they would actually get the help of Hudson Soft, in which, wait, what the hell? Yeah, that's the one thing that surprised me, that Hudson Soft actually helped Wood Code develop and assist Sonic Team in creating this game, in which it's really weird to look at it that way, because you're really just going to the other competition. But what the hell? Does Sega pull something out of their ass and make something that would have been a cult classic, or do they stumble upon something in which it kind of gains a loyal fan base, in which it makes itself a alternative towards the Mario Party games, in which, yeah, I'm letting you know this now, I've written this like a year ago, and no, it doesn't. So when I played Sonic Shuffle, it really felt really weird in a lot of ways when I'm such a Mario Party veteran that I've literally completed nearly all the Mario Party games if it has a story mode. But I think this game has a lot of quirks, and stay with me here, and we're going to talk about Sonic Shuffle and what it does well and what it does in a way that kind of hurts itself going back upon to it. And listen, I'm going to let y'all know this about the whole gameplay and footage. If anything looks weird upon with the graphics or slowdown, that's just because of emulation. There might be a couple things that, in my opinion, might have been changed because of it being emulation, but let me just put it like this. I tried my best to give the best visuals, but I also tried to give myself the best experience, so I'm going to be splicing a couple of the gameplay in different forms, so it doesn't look as bad as it could be. And what I wish it could be would be a more entertaining story in a lot of ways. Well, by this time with the Dreamcast, Sonic kind of went into a more radical direction with a lot of things. Gone of the simple stories of Sonic just stopping Eggman, but Sonic destroying a god in a lot of ways. With this reboot, Sonic kind of had a different direction in almost everything, by his look, his eyes, and how even giving him a voice. And in this story, it goes as this. In an alternate dimension where dreams and reality coexist, known as Imaginary World, there are these precious stones, and they've been shattered by the Void, in which there's a chance that the world is being erased. And as a guardian fairy, Illumina Flowlight sends a message to the strongest from various worlds. And our favorite color animals gets the message and they get transported by the light. What the game gets the rundown, and happy to join the help out, but there's a little of unknowing because Eggman catching wind of the situation and Eggman's goal to fix this place by himself. And so with this playthrough, I chose Sonic, so in this case, Sonic's goal is to fix this place and stop Eggman from doing whatever he wants with the world. And with this, there's 5 levels that are given to the player, in which you go to each world, completing it and getting first place to continue on with the story. The rules of the game is basically this. Players are given a set of cards where the player can use to move around on the board. The original gimmick is with the VMU, and if you don't know what a VMU is, don't worry, whippersnappers, I got you. It was pretty much this small little Tamagotchi that would be an accessory towards your Dreamcast controller, in which once you put it in, there's things that would pop up and help you through your journey. A lot of times that this would actually just be fun little mini games that you can have in your pocket while you're going to school or work and whatnot, in which, come on, you wouldn't want a little child with this? But with this game, it's there to see your cards. Yeah, this was one of the weirdest things about this game to me, was we're playing with cards and we're not just playing with dice rolls. As they're useful as going in any direction, it really just depends on your strategy, and if you're playing with other people, I'm sure that this is actually a fun mechanic to have. And now, the things that we are catching, the precious crystals, are basically stars with the Sega twist. And if you know Mario Party, in the most basic sense, stars are your way to determine who's been doing the objective of actually playing the game or not. Yes, I know, by later games, they actually toyed with this gimmick and actually did a couple of different ideas, but around this time, it was just a novel idea to make things more of an objectively challenged game, in which the biggest twist in Sonic Shuffle is that rings aren't actually a way to pay for precious stones. They're actually used to just get items and keep momentum and showing your skill set and everything. Trust me, this game can be stingy with giving you rings and rings just getting piled up. It just depends on the board and whatnot, But the main thing that I will definitely say is this, that besides that, rings don't really play a major factor in this game unless you are getting items. And I think that is one of the biggest problems here. You see, in regular Mario Party, it's kind of a set objective of everything here, that you would play a mini game after everyone gets a turn, and that you would win coins, or in this case, rings. But instead, in this game, there is no reason to win minigames unless you are purely going for the competitive edge. And that's with the rewards. But we'll get to that when we get to that. I honestly have more to say about the card system because it is a good idea, but I just think that it's not a fun idea in my book because of the simple fact that it's just so saddening when the 6s, the 5s, and the 4s, and even the S card is taken out. By the way, I should talk about that. So, in the simplest of ways, the S card is a special card. And a special card is just a card that you're able to randomly select a card of either from the opponents or sneak peek of. This gives you a chance to choose your own dice if you're really good with timing. And if you roll an S, you get an extra step. So instead of 6, you can actually get 7. But you see that the problem is the simple fact that there's only 4 of each card set. So besides S, because there's an Eggman, and the Eggman is pretty much a bad luck card. That becomes the biggest issue because the game becomes a drag when the 4s, the 5s, the 6s aren't available and you only have 1, 2, and 3 cards all around, in which it becomes a choice of randomness because we can all see how many cards are left. The only thing that your opponent can't see is the cards that you have. So in this screen and point of view, you kind of have to say to yourself, oh boy, there's a chance of me getting a 3, but there's 2 1s out there. How am I gonna get it? God damn it! And so Sonic Shuffle kind of gives me that weird feeling of it wants to get the game on a really good pace, but it doesn't want to fully do the things that Mario Party has, in which if I really had to tweak the system, I think I wouldn't have done this system. I think I would have just given 10 cards and you got a choice of picking whatever the 10 cards. There's always an Eggman, there's always an S card, but hey, everything's on the table for you. But, and I'm putting it like that because in Mario Party, you can have a bad streak of getting 1s, your 2s, your 4s, and you feel like that you're not moving. But then the next guy can have the best dice rolls ever, getting your 8s, your 9s, and 10s. And it brings out a form of animosity for them, but it also can work in your favor because down the line you can be getting those lucky chances of rolling that dice, going further than anyone, and stealing stars like that. Even getting stars in Sonic Shuffle, it feels like a hassle because instead of just going and paying for it, you actually have to go through a card battle to actually win this. So a lot more times that you're going to be going through these stages trying to get to it, and then once you get to it, you probably don't have the right amount of cards. You don't have a 4, you probably have a 3, you probably have a 2, and you probably don't have any items with you to help you along the way. In which, I'll be serious with you when I say this, it got me infuriated, because that I just couldn't get it, it just felt like you were trying too hard for me to make this a challenge. The challenge is getting to the star, not just going to it and then challenging it. You kinda just make me have to remake the food for doing this. And it's even more infuriating when there's only 1 card left, and that's the card that you have to use because guess what? When the cards get reshuffled, whoever's right next to you is gonna get it because guess what? The CPU always gets it pretty much. And it's not like the items actually help you. It's more that they're kinda just there to be there because a lot of them really don't do anything besides increase your spaces or just gives you 30 spaces to go through. In which I know that Mario Party had the dices that you could buy and they would randomly appear in your party games, but those were randomly given by this time. This game wouldn't come out, Mario Party 2 wouldn't come out till the next month, so of course they probably had NDAs and they probably didn't know about the item system with it. These items just simply feel like that they had an idea, they've written it down, but yet they couldn't elaborate it further, and they said, well crap, well, let's just use it. To me, these really don't have any pure value unless it is something with movement, in which it's actually beneficial, especially if you know what you have with your deck. But these just make me feel so disappointed with them. and let's actually cheer up the room and actually talk about the boards in this game. Game gives you 5 boards to select even at the start, in which they are Emerald Coast, a tropical and ice themed board, which the main gimmick is the water being the factor that if you stay in the water for too long that you can actually wash up back onto surface, but there's air pockets around, and so it's never going to be the worst thing to happen. It's only about knowing how much spaces that you have. I've seen this as the main example of them showing gameplay of it, and it is the best board in my opinion because of how basic it is. It isn't anything that is so difficult, but it isn't anything that is so complicated to make you feel so confused. There is a hidden gimmick with all of these boards, in which the hidden gimmick in this one is rescuing a dolphin, and if you do, you pretty much get the prize for the story mode. You get the hidden precious stone, in which you might have noticed something that there's these special little symbols around here. These symbols are going with how Mario Party does it, with blue being getting rings, red being not getting rings. You have these purple spaces in which you have to go into a battle and use your cards or whoever's cards. And then you have a space for mini games. You also have the spring space that'll just warp you around, but the main thing is that these boards change over time. Things would shift, things would move, in which the game more times than not get more closer, or it becomes more intricate of where you are on the map, in which this would bring into Firebird, a mechanical board with steam playing a factor and the ship breaking down, making this board more or less more closer spaces to anything, in which this one would have all the things that you would expect in a board like this. The hidden spaces going and, releasing the pressure valve and putting gas in, but there's also these spaces that I've mentioned in the last one, in which is these character spaces, in which at the start of the game you only start with 4 characters: Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy, which you're probably seeing here in this gameplay. That Tails, Knuckles, and Amy have specific spaces that they can go through, in which it's either easier routes or just an easier way to get places. And you know what Sonic gets? Double space. And that is either your best friend or your worst enemy. Most times, my worst enemy. You're fucking with me! But that would send us to Nature Zone, a forest board. There's these crocodiles that control the river. That would basically be a way to be a cheap ring deposit for you not having enough spaces. But the main thing in this board as well is that it does get cumbersome, in which there will be borders that you can't go through after precious stones being grabbed, in which it would have one of the more annoying precious stones to get, which you have to go to a specific space, land on it, have to traverse all the way to the center of the map, in which that's where you get the final precious stone. But the biggest issue is that if you're like me and stuck on the other side, you can't participate in any of it, so you're just here in limbo. I wonder if this is how Chows feel when they get abandoned. Riot Train. Well, I can at least see where Hudson Soft got the idea in Mario Party 8, but this is the idea of taking the train and how narrow path it could be, and taking that idea and always adding and subtracting to it, to making this board long and exaggerated long. But you see, there's a problem when I recorded this one, because the CPUs in this game are pretty stupid. And they're not stupid in the way you think they are, like they're not smart enough to win minigames. No, if anything, it's the opposite. It's the Sega Stank. They're really good at those things, but when it's something like this, where you're literally stuck here because of this space right here, and this space right here, it rotates you back and forth, so it's a 50-50 chance. But most of the time, the characters will just go, hit the space, and immediately land in the same spot, in which it would create duels. I never mentioned duels because this is a Versif exclusive thing, but holy hell, when I seen these duels happen back to back to back practically every time, it got aggravated to the point that I just did not care for this. In which the objective is to stay in the closest to 0, but the problem is that with its instructions, it really doesn't feel like that. More times it feels like that you're supposed to grab the most cards, but in the rules that they have in there instructing that you can give cards to your opponent and send cards for yourself. So it does feel so complicated with something like that, when it really just could have been the easiest form of just saying whoever gets the most cards win. No, 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 my friend. You're gonna have to sit there every time with these duels. These duels will operate every time that you're playing, and it's random if it's 3 people sitting on the space. But I do think the board was a good idea. There is parts where there are narrow endways where someone can always swoop in if they want to take the time to commit to the spaces of what's required to get it. But oh my god, I desperately hated this board and recording for it. But finally, you would get the 4th dimension. And this board's whole gimmick is to deliberately confuse you because of its shape of being in a sphere. And there's nothing wrong with this board, more or less. I actually thought this was one of the better boards when I was recording it. But the only biggest issue that I had with it was down the line when you are getting these precious stones, there's a little trigger loop that if your CPUs are not smart enough, they will keep repeating the path. I will give a pass to Riot Train because it was right next to it, but no, one of the most easiest spots to get a precious stone, you would have to traverse the route, and then this little fucker right here would take you and move you and send you back to the spaces that you would need to go, in which the best spot to go is to go back to that route, and then you keep doing it. So it's either your job to go and try to swoop in which that's going to be tedious as hell, or you just let them keep doing it until you blow your brains out. But I do think the differences between this annoyance and Mario Party's annoyance is the simple fact that Mario Party always felt like that there was a structure into its rules. Of course, with the first one, you've always had these weird stages, just like Peach's birthday cake, Luigi's Engineer, and Eternal Star, in which these are prime examples of the same gimmicks in mind of what I feel about these games. But I do think the difference between these and the other is that these are fair enough that they change over time. These, on the other hand, it doesn't. It just does it when it wants or when the precious stone moves. I'm not mad that they tried to do the elaborate thing where they try to make things tighter, but I'd rather just have more intricate boards and fairer maps with a space count to roll with, instead of having this large map where you can go wherever you want, but if you want to get the precious stone, you have to be intricate and fast. You've got to roll 6s every time and roll the right dice. God damn it, Sonic, why'd you have to roll doubles here? Even if you want to say that Mario Party is not fair with its spaces, especially in Peach's birthday cake where you can just buy a space to just steal a star, I'm going to put it like this and say it's different, that as random it is for Mario Party and having random spaces like that, there was always a time set that you can always feel like that you have the confidence to continue on. It never felt like crap, there's only one precious stone left and I have to get it. It more felt like, hey, I got 5 turns left. I haven't been on a dry streak of rolling high. I can get the star next and keep myself in contention. And I think that's the biggest issue with this game. There's no turn count. This game doesn't have a turn count, and so games can feel like that they're either going to go for 45 minutes, or with the Riot Train one, felt like 2 hours because of just all the constant dueling, and then us just tracking down and trying to get to the last precious stone. And I can definitely give this game its flowers with that as being the biggest factor, because when I look at a lot of other games that try to do this, that came out later on into the GameCube and PlayStation 2 era, they really didn't understand these boards well, in which they try to do these weird gimmicks where it just doesn't work, or try to be elaborate with it, and again, messing up during the process. It's not like your other games where the games are more focused on the mini games. It's not a party game, it's a showcase. Oh, Mario Party would even experiment with that idea that Crash Boom Bang did of having everyone move at the same time. It's not fun. And what this game does is interesting enough, but it's aggravating enough. Speaking of minigames in this game, I will at least give them a B- for trying. Because in order for minigames to start, you have to land on a space for one. So minigames aren't just an end of a turn thing. It's more of a, you land on the space and we get a random minigame. In which I think that a lot of them do try hard, but it's kind of the issue with a lot of Sega series, in my opinion, If you've played a lot of Nintendo games, you kind of get what I'm about to say, but Sega games have this feeling of being tough for people first time playing. In which, yes, you can say get good, but in this case, I'm more saying this as a person that would want to recommend this game by showing them these mini games. In which, I think the worst issue is that they don't really get to be comprehensible, or they don't explain it fully in a good way. I can give a couple of these games, and I'll give a couple as an example. Let's look at Bomb Rally, where the mission is timing your throws and maximizing the distance so you can throw the bomb into the lake first. But the biggest thing is that they don't tell you about the timing, or at least when they do, they don't tell you that there's a small delay that you would have to really pick up on. And so with your first time, you're definitely probably going to lose because you never understood that. You're just like, wait a minute, why is it going like this? And even something like Over the Bridge, where the game takes place on the bridge, like in the theme, but the thing is that they don't tell you about all the other things besides that you can fall off. The biggest issue that I have with this game is that they want you to learn about these mini games and tricks, but the problem is that when you are in such a casual environment, things have to be fair to a T. And that's what Mario Party does in a lot of ways, even though Mario Party 1 is extremely cruel to the one player. Games in this, it tries its best to give the advantage, but a lot of times it just feels manipulative. Because when you're looking at something like Sonic Cooking, I don't know how the one player would win this, besides just keep trying to flip or like in Maniac Maze, where the one player has such an advantage for the first half of the game, or the final half, the players actually start getting the advantage to actually move around, in which, to be honest with you, it just feels artificial. In which I just want to say, Hudson Soft, why didn't you tell them which of these minigames would work and not just tell them what and why they would work? It's one of those things that makes me really confused about this game, because a lot of these minigames aren't bad in concept. Hell, I even see them in Mario Party in a lot of them, but they just don't work in this because they're either weirdly explained, where it's aggravating when you lose the game because you just couldn't comprehend, or worse, they're bland as bread. And that brings up to board exclusive minigames, or what I like to call the accidental minigames, in which each board gets an accidental alert, in which players would have to play a exclusive minigame for them, in which most of them aren't bad. They're a good way to get rings or an extra item if you're not near an item shop, but holy hell, these are boring for the most part. I can just show you this whole gameplay right here, and I'll ask you if you find this entertaining. And most of the time you'd probably say no, unless you're someone that likes jingling keys, and you'd probably still say no. I even say that the worst thing about these is that since they're random, after getting maybe like 2 of the precious stones, that they kind of become so a frequent thing that I kind of really don't like playing them. They just get annoying at some point, in which with all of these there is a final minigame just for you to rack up your coins before they present everything. And like, these minigames aren't bad, but again, it's the same problem with all the minigames. They only explain so much, but explain so little that you kind of feel like you gotta play the game again just to really comprehend it. In which it brings the question of how do you win a game of Sonic Shuffle, in which there are stars, I'm just gonna call them stars at this point, that you will get throughout your whole adventure, in which it is your minigame star, your coin star, and the hidden star. In which in story mode, it's the objective that you've done, and in versus, it's pretty much whatever it wanted it to be. If you're playing the story mode, it's winning the final stage clear minigame and the specific quest, and in versus, it's the most dueling wins. And so I think the biggest problem is that it's pacing. The pacing in this game just doesn't really work for something like this, because when you have these mini games, it really should be that these mini games should just happen every end of turn, but they're landing on spaces. So yes, games can feel faster, but when you have back-to-back mini games, then you have the battle space where the character goes and face whatever enemy that is there to win more coins. It just feels more repetitive. The difference is with this and Mario Party 1 is that Mario Party 1 feels faster because there's a flow to it. There's a system to it. Once the mini game ends, it's the start of the new one. In this one, whoever gets the last Precious Stone, the game ends. In which, to me, that just doesn't work out in a lot of ways. Because I know if I played this with friends, there is definitely going to be one of them that is going to be asking to tap out of this because it's getting repetitive and boring. Now, I know I've been extensively critical, and this pretty much just feels like a rant now. But I do think that this game does a lot of things that would be interesting if this game had a sequel, that they could have ironed these things out. I do think that the card system is interesting, and I even give my own idea. I like the idea that if I'm playing with someone and I steal their card and it's a good one and they feel aggravated. And I also feel like I can always bait and switch them if I have the Eggman card, in which, yeah, it's going to feel great when that happens because it's going to ruin their chances. And why do I say that? Because Mario Party 2 exists. Mario Party 2 did everything that Mario Party 1 did and ironed things out and did its own thing with it. It did better boards. It did final board that is actually more entertaining. The thing is that I just feel like this game just doesn't do anything that really gives me to say, man, I want to play again. But I don't mean to be and I mean too hard. I do think that this game does have its own qualities that it could be good. Since we don't have a sequel, it remains as something as a unpolished stone in a lot of ways. I do look at this game with more of a harsh, but knowing that it could be better. But if I'm looking at all these games, I think I can properly put this in a good place on here. This is my Mario Party opinionated scale. I am being objective with all these, with my own simple biases of showing what I think what is the best and worst of these games. I've only showed the Mario Party ones, not because I didn't want to have any other ones. It's just that I was lazy and I just got on the Mario Wiki and just selected them all. But if I had to put Sonic Shuffle anywhere, I think I'd put it right here. I'm definitely never going back to the 3DS games. And Mario Party 9 and 10, they're games that I feel like they have good enough mini games to go back to, but the boards are just not fun. And in Sonic Shuffle, the boards are interesting enough with people, and the mini games definitely need work. Hi, I hope that you enjoyed this. Wait a minute, I forgot about the story. Oh, okay, so this guy right here, he's the main villain, and his name's actually Void, and once you actually complete it, they're both manifested into Illumina, in which the goddess of the world, in which things go back to square one in a lot of ways, but pretty much this character here are just half of the same being. Okay, you got that? Hi, hello. I hope that you enjoyed this video for what it was. I really just needed to get something out just for myself that wasn't just the reviews that I was doing for the longest. And with something like this was a easier thing to do. But if you've gotten this far enough, I do appreciate it. I know there's not a lot of y'all watching, but every one of y'all count, and I appreciate every single one of you. Don't forget, I do upload to other platforms, so if you don't want to watch it here, you can always go to the link tree and there's always somewhere else to watch. And follow me elsewhere because those things will help me along the way. Bye!